So what I'll do is we'll just start a little bit because I have a little eye symbol on my thing, and it tells me how many people are watching. So if nobody joins us for the first few minutes, then we'll just start talking because
Sure.
it's yeah, just the way it is.
Oh,
I had a really interesting one of my first podcasts of this kind was with my cousin who owns a horse therapy business in Quesnel.
right.
And I talked to her 1 or 2 days later, and she said she'd gotten 2 phone calls from people in Quesnel who had seen the video. And I was like, where did they see the video? And she figures they saw it on YouTube. So it's like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's great. This is the way things are going to move.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really do
Yeah.
believe,
All right.
that.
Well, it looks to me like we have 2 guests, so I'm just going to start. All right. My guest today is John Zukowski. And so I've known John a little bit and been following him a little bit on social media and on Facebook, talking a lot about downtown issues. And here he is running for city council. John, can you just briefly introduce yourself and tell us what you want people to know about you?
Well, hi, everybody. My name is John Zukowski. I'm a small business owner in Prince George, and I'm also running for city council. I am the active spokesperson for the Prince George Downtown Business Advocacy Group. I also sit on the Mayor's Select Committee for a Safe, Clean, and Inclusive Downtown. Anybody that's been watching the news, the local CKPG news, knows about our issues with the downtown core and how it is slowly spreading from the downtown to the surrounding residential areas in town. The problems are becoming worse. So with that committee stalling out and us not getting anywhere, I figured the only way to affect change, you couldn't do it from the outside, is run for city council and see if we can change it in the inside.
Mm-hmm. So is this the first time you've ever run for political office?
Yeah.
So you weren't exactly
Yeah.
a political wannabe, eh?
I know I'll look myself in the mirror a couple of times and gone, are you serious? And I keep looking at myself in the mirror and going, yeah, I am. It's I have to do it. Having sat on the mayor's committee, we literally found we were getting nowhere. We were being given information by administration, but we weren't allowed to talk. And stirring conversation is what I enjoy doing. Not lighting fires, but getting people to get involved in a conversation. Everybody has a level of frustration that if you're sitting at a table, once you voice it, you get it out there, you go, okay. Now you dial yourself back and go, okay, obviously the situation is bothering me. There's issues I need to address, and I need help from everybody else at the table to help to address those. So that's the point.
And so that standing committee was struck to deal with the issues that the downtown business owners were seeing, but it hasn't really been able to accomplish anything?
The city has advocated to BC Housing, to Northern Health, to several other, they always like to use the phrase partners. So that would be the Native Friendship Center, AWAC, the other social service agencies in town. They've reached out to them, but they didn't bring them in and get us all involved in discussion. There was no open in the room discussion. And then we were hit with the pandemic, so the meetings ended. So everything was done this way by Zoom or whichever. And we weren't getting any work done. They brought a facilitator in, which I have to be honest, I think it was a waste of money if they had just got everybody together and let them talk. we could have gotten somewhere a lot further than we did with the facilitator that, again, basically steered the committee in a predetermined direction, in my opinion, by administration. So, yeah, it didn't get anywhere. And
And
we
so
ended up at the community safety hub, and we know how that's
that's the
going.
building on First Avenue there?
Yeah, it's the second floor of the energy transfer building that they spent $60,000 to renovate to put in a couple of offices. And
Oh, that's not the housing on First Avenue. This is a
oh
different
yeah,
building.
no, the community energy building is on, I believe it's on the corner of Second and Quebec.
Yeah.
And then we're talking about you're thinking about the facility that's being put together by Northern Health and BC Housing at First Avenue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that was your reason for running. So um just the frustration of not seeing anything happen, and being on a committee thinking that, okay, I'm going to be on the inside, I'm going to talk to the people who can actually make an impact or have an impact on what's happening in Prince George, and especially the downtown, and you just saw it not going anywhere, and so here you are.
That's right. Well, also being the spokesperson for the business advocacy group, this isn't medium businesses. These are small mom and pop operations. Um, you know, this is their pension money. This is money they've saved up, and they're running a business. They love, providing services to the community.
Mhm.
They're the folks that sponsor the baseball teams and the youth sports and the dry grads, and they're willing to pitch in anytime you ask them. So that is 97% of the economic drivers in British Columbia is small business, and they're all sole proprietorships. And with the pandemic, when you're a sole proprietorship, you weren't allowed to get any federal funding whatsoever. So go figure that one out.
That was a stunning lack of knowledge, I thought, about what actually drives our economy. So um so with being so obviously downtown issues are sort of your main concern, and just really, and I think there's a lot of people that would agree that the heart of any city is its downtown, and sort of whatever happens there radiates out to the west, to the rest of the city, and even the criminal, or the criminal and homeless problems also do the same thing, right? They radiate out from the downtown. So
Sure we do.
yeah, so what do you think, like, if you look at Prince George as a whole, what do you think is the I mean, I know that downtown concerns you greatly, but do you think what's the biggest challenge that PG faces?
The biggest challenge that Prince George um, faces is where it's at right now. It's I like to call it the city in bloom. It's gone beyond being a village. It's gone beyond being a town. It's on the doorstep of being an honest to God city, but it's scared. It's scared to take that next jump. We still want to be, hey, how you doing? As soon as you see somebody walking down the street, and you do the smile thing, and that's great. That's part of the reason I relocated from Victoria, was people walked down the sidewalk, they held their heads up, you made eye contact, you got a nod or a hi, or even just a casual smile, and that's an endearing thing to Prince George. But it is reality. It is a hub. It is a city. And that's a scary part. People want to keep that tight knit community thing close, but they got to realize that we have to start acting like a city. That means that we have to start addressing some rules. There's a lot of things. It's a transition point, and it's going to take a little bit of time. We're at what, maybe 78,000 people here?
Yeah, I think just barely. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that we were at 80,000 a number of years ago, and I mean, and so that leads into a bigger question of like, what do you see Prince George's role? I know, I'm not sure if it was like you've lived in Prince George for how long now?
Well, since 2005, so
Okay.
17 years, yeah.
Okay. So were you already here when City Council sort of made a decision that Prince George was going to be the retail hub of the North?
Um, I
Or did
think
that?
we had just settled in, so we were still in our little bubble, enjoying the house we just bought.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, because I thought at the time when that happened, and just for anybody joining us now, I'm talking with John Zukowski. He's a candidate for City Council. Welcome. And so we're just talking about some of the biggest challenges that Prince George faces. And John has just said that it's basically Prince George trying to become in the middle of becoming a big town and becoming an actual honest to God city. Um, and you've and I that whole so city council made that commit like that sort of direction decision that we would become a retail hub, and I thought at the time that that was a little bit sad actually, because that meant that we were pulling retail sales away from small communities. So how do you feel about that? Like, what do you think is the role of Prince George in the north? I mean, we're known as BC's northern capital, but that doesn't get talked about a lot these days. How do you see that?
well, we are the northern capital. If anybody needs serious medical services, short of going down to Vancouver, it's our hospital here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you need something, if you're in any of the northern communities, you need something, you come into Prince George. So, reality, you can't get there from here, and you can't get here from there without going through Prince George. So, you can't get to Vancouver without going through Prince, unless, of course, you fly. But that's the whole point. Um, Prince George can be an economic driver, not only for Prince George, but for the other northern communities. Small businesses in these small communities, there's no reason why we can't have warehousing where they can get their shipments coming out of Prince George as opposed to being shipped up from Vancouver. There's so many options and opportunities here. I don't think we're going to kill small community business. I think, if anything, we're going to help it thrive by cutting down the transportation distances from Vancouver to Prince George, and from Prince George to Smithers and Terrace and Rupert and Fort St. John, Fort St. James. Yeah, it only makes sense if it has to go north of here, then it may as well easily come from here. So there's a lot of economic drivers that way. I think it's a good thing.
Okay, so so what other things, what other areas are we like? Do you see or sort of see? Okay, we need to take another step here to become a bona fide city. What are other things that you've seen that we need to get a handle on?
Well, the realities of Prince George, and we're seeing it. It's a user pay world. That's what it's becoming. So I like to use the analogy of the $50 or 50-cent lemonade. Which are you going to get? Um, when it comes to supplying services, you get further if you're charging 50 cents for a quality product. You know, you can get further. More people are buying, so by volume you build. The same applies to taxation. If the tax rate is low, you build densification. It's cheaper to take and build and buy a house in Prince George. The property tax is low, services are reasonable, and then with the density and population, you grow a tax base. With that tax base, you can fund and offset more of the expenses to the homeowners, and moreover, cutting back some of the expenses to small business as well. And
Okay.
then from that, the economy grows. Prince George has been for decades. It's been a resource town, a logging, mining, the energy sector. Um, so we have to look at, not per se walking away from that completely, but we have to look at a different way of doing business. Um, tech services, data centers. We've got fiber optics now in Prince George, courtesy of TELUS and a few other service providers. So the advantage is the internet service is not bad. There is high-speed service. So having a data center in Prince George to supply services to outlying communities, it's totally practical. I mean, we've got an expanded airport. It was a regional airport, was turned into an international airport because the airport was expanded, and that was post 9/11.
Yeah.
So, there's opportunity there. It's just we've got to take and showcase that. City council needs to showcase that to the other communities and other cities and say, look, if you want to do business in northern BC, we got you covered up in Prince George. Tell us what you need and we'll make it happen.
Okay, you touched briefly on something that someone was asking about getting more affordable housing that developers build, not necessarily BC Housing or something like that, but just like developers. This person was saying that we have a real shortage of studio and one-bedroom apartments. We have lots of townhouses and condos, but not enough housing for single people and or university students. So, do you see that? Do you think that's an issue, or what have you seen of that?
It is an issue, and it comes down to how we're marketing, and moreover, how the city is marketing itself to developers. If we see a need for student housing, single person, suites, bachelor suites, things like that, we've got to turn around and pipe up to developers and say, look, this is what we need. We need some population density along our transportation corridors for public transit. And we've got to encourage them to turn around and build. If that means that we've got to look at giving them some incentives to do so, then so be it. But bottom line is, that's how you build density. Again, like I said, the 50 cent or $50 lemonade, which one are you going to prefer?
Yeah, well, that was one question I had with that I've sent you, was about the Ferguson Lake development. I mean, yeah, that'll be very nice for the people living there. I mean, luckily it's built outside of city limits, but so it might be a little bit different. But I mean, how do you see? Because I know that we've had a few developments approved that are sort of on the outskirts of city. And how do you feel like, should we be paying more attention to building infill? Because again, all of those streets, that is often brought up at city council, is that the reason that our snow removal budget is so huge is because we have so many streets and we have a lot of snow.
Oh, yeah.
And then also say that the reason, and our roads and our sidewalks, what is it, 50 years for some of them to be repaired? Like, can you,
yeah.
Is that just a matter of we just have simply we're too big? I mean, or what's the problem there?
I think what has to happen is within the city, council needs to turn around. A new council needs to turn around, sit down in a closed door meeting, without administration, without city staff there, sit down and spitball an idea amongst all the councillors. What have you heard from the people who have voted you in? What are their concerns? Let's map them out and let's formulate our own plan without administration helping us along, and let's see what we can do. Prince George is a big splat. It really is. It covers way too much area. And it seems to be, now I could be wrong, so I'm gonna qualify this carefully. I think it seems to be that every time the province has something they want to get rid of, and respect to land, they go, hey, Prince George, get a chunk of land for you. Has a road on it. It's got a bridge, well, a culvert. Okay, but we'll give it to you. Are you interested? And of course, the city just, yeah. So that's a problem. We keep grabbing stuff. We got to look at doing some infill. Bottom line is housing is expensive. Entry level housing is an absolute bugger. Now, when you and I were kids, and I'm going to take us back to our late teens, early 20s, housing wasn't that expensive. I mean, we could get a 2-bedroom apartment in downtown Victoria for $225 a month.
Oh my word.
That included heat, that included hydro, and a pool and a weight room and everything. And that was right downtown and along a bus route and a very popular building. So, I mean, yeah, that's unheard of now. That $325 is more like 1,350, and it's a 1-bedroom, not a 2 or 3-bedroom.
Yeah.
So that's the problem. We have to get some developers in to look and say, okay, city, we would like to get a parcel of land. What do you want to sell us? We want to put in entry-level housing. 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, simple, square, little, energy efficient, bungalow type houses on a nice, easy going neighborhood with alleyways, garages, and just something that a young family starting out can turn around and easily qualify for with a mortgage and get into. Yes, qualifying for $1.2 million to get into a home. Are you on glue? I mean, that's crazy. And then you have the mortgage, you have the car loan, the truck loan, the toy loan. Then you have whatever student debt. It's like, how can they afford that? They can't. And that creates an economic loader on couples and families. Half of the issues with families come from financial stress.
Yes.
So if we're stressing them out trying to afford an overpriced house, that's a problem. So encouraging developers to come in and generate lots of housing, cost affordable, reasonable housing at a reasonable rate. Again, that's my 50-cent or $50 lemonade. I keep coming back to that. But that's truly it. Make your money over time, not over, selling 3 and I got my $150, I'm happy. That's not the way to do things. You do things over time. So if we have infill housing, we build some socially conscious neighborhoods planned so that people can turn around and evolve. You don't turn around, buy one house and just keep adding to it. No, you get that paid down, and then you look at something a little bit bigger to move into, and you vacate that house so some other young family can come in and get a start. Mm-hmm. That's what I see as being the way to move forward.
Okay, so if you have a developer that builds a like starter apartments or starter homes, I know I've been reading rumblings that partly what's happening to our house prices is that we've got huge multinational companies buying up these places and driving up the price. How do you feel like if that is found to be the case, and if that's found to be actually happening here, does the city have any mechanisms to prevent that from happening? Like, are there any tools for the city?
I'm trying to think. I think that would fall under the province.
Okay.
I think we would have to go to the province and see if they could pass some form of legislation to prevent a developer from coming in and gobbling up a bunch of homes and jacking the prices up.
Okay.
Right. I don't know if that falls. Our OCP, unfortunately, it dates back to 2014.
And that's official community plan. What's the purpose? Can you explain a little bit about the purpose and what it is?
The official community plan, all communities have an OCP. And what it is it's a provincial guideline as to how your community is going to function. zoning, all that, the whole requirements of different zoning levels, residential and such. The OCP covers how that's done. It's basically a blueprint. And then each community, depending on its needs, can alter and amend sections of their OCP as they see it needs to be done for their particular situation.
Mhm.
Ours hasn't been revised since, I believe, 2018.
Yes.
So that's something to dive into, and we have to look at it. It might even be covered there, as you were mentioning about the grabbing of homes and stuff and jacking up the prices.
Yeah, okay. All right. So, can we talk a little bit more? Like, I'd like to go for another about 15 minutes.
Sure.
Can we talk a little bit about, do you want to end on the situation with downtown? Do you want to end with that discussion? Because that's something that you've done so much work on.
Well,
Or would you rather address that now? And I'll just ask you some other questions later.
the downtown core is a serious situation, and if it's left unchecked, it can become a real dangerous situation for a lot of people. What folks don't realize is, not everybody, but some people don't realize that there's three elements. There's homeless by situation, then there's homeless by action, and then there's homeless by choice. So there's the three levels of homelessness. Then you have the criminal element that every community has. The only problem is our criminal element is hiding in plain sight and moves among those three groups of individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Homeless by situation could be drug addiction. It could be being banned from your home setting. There's all sorts of different things that can cause it. Bottom line is addictions and mental health. Mental health is the primary key. Addictions is the result of a mental health issue. When a person can no longer cope, they look for a crutch. That crutch is usually drugs or alcohol. When they get pushed far enough that they're no longer in a home, no longer have employment, no longer have any couches that they can crash on or anybody they can borrow money from on the Never Never plan, then it turns to crime. So looking after our mental health care and our addictions issues is critical.
But that's not something the city has a lot of influence on. I mean, or is that what the purpose of that committee was?
Well, the purpose of the committee was to look at the crime in general and the homelessness and the other social issues and try and address them in a teamwork fashion. But that we never really got too far.
Right. So what's the impact of the fact that this problem is not being dealt with? What's the impact on your business and on the downtown business advocacy group? Like, what are the problems that you're hearing?
Well, the big problem is the crime. Being small businesses, you only have your insurance policy. A lot of people are ignorant to the fact that you can only claim on insurance once or twice. By the time you hit round three, you're done. The insurance company is going to walk away from you. Now you need insurance in order to, you have to have slip and fall insurance. You have to have insurance to protect yourself from liability for the landlord. There's all sorts of insurance. So claiming that front window at $2,000 on your insurance where your deductible is $2,500, it's pretty much worthless. If you do claim the window, good luck on getting a policy the next year because it's pretty much doubled, if not tripled.
So
and that's the problem.
So if people are driving by these businesses or they hear on the news that another business was broken into and they see a window smashed or whatever, they need to know that that's not coming out of their insurance policy, that's coming out of their pocket.
That's right.
And so, because I know that there's been a lot of people who are, that they have a lot of compassion for the people that find themselves homeless, and they see the downtown businesses who are complaining about the situation as adversaries. So how do you address that?
We're not adversarial. We want to see the outreach services doing something to help the individuals. Many of the small businesses have gone to outreaches with food, with money, with supplies, with clothing. We're there to help, but at the same jest, we can't turn around and help if we are constantly being victimized ourselves. Then, when you have this criminal activity, I mean, to be a senior business owner and to be hit in the face because some young 20-something has stolen something off your shelf, you stop her and ask her to give it back, and she hauls off and punches you in the face, and she thinks that's okay. I mean, that's a problem. The small businesses, we're all here to turn around and look after the community. But so we come to the city, we tell the city, look, you got to advocate. The city cannot build housing. The city cannot treat addictions, but the city does have the power to turn to the province and say, we need help. This is what's happening. We're at our wits' end. And we need you to step up and deal with this. And that's the idea of what the committee was supposed to do.
So how do you feel about the city pursuing the homeless camp injunction in the court system? Because there was a ruling again that the city lost. Do you feel the city is right to pursue that, or how do you feel about that? And you don't have to give an answer, like, if you're feeling that the legal stuff is beyond.
Well, no. I mean, the rule of law is the rule of law. It's very simple. If a judge makes a decision that's short of our Supreme Court, the ruling of a jurist is the highest decision that you and I could receive. So you have to respect that. The judge said, this is the way it goes. These are the rules. Play by the rules. Okay, so you play by the rules.
Yeah, and they didn't.
They didn't. Somewhere now, the wheel of fortune is still turning. It's this stuff. Who's responsible? Bottom line is, it come down to the city. The city turned around and removed items by whoever's instruction. It wasn't that of a jurist. So. Yeah, the city's wrong. The city's wrong. That's very simple. The rules of law are real easy. You don't need to be a lawyer to understand it.
Yeah.
This is right and this is wrong, right?
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So, all
I know that was clear as borscht. Yeah.
No, that's good. So I just saw recently that the city has another another opportunity to reject the alternative approval process for some more vehicles. So, John, if you were on city council, would you approve that? And then we'll go to the toilet issue. And why do they keep doing this? Why do we need to have an alternative approval process for vehicles? That is beyond me.
Well, it's if you stretch it out long enough, people get bored, and when people get bored, they move along, and that's how you get stuff under the wire. I don't need to remind you about the $34.5 million parkade that, had it not been for Brian Skaken mentioning that in open council and saying, if I didn't mention this would have just been a line item on the budget, right? The response was yes.
Oh my goodness.
So
$32 million.
34.5.
Right. Over budget by 22, I think.
Yep. 12.5 was the sale pitch. The hammer went down at 34.5.
How many roads and how many sidewalks could have been refurbished and rebuilt, and sewers, water lines like that. That's the part that I just find stunning.
And the killer is that all that money was pulled out of pulled internally under the approval by our former city manager.
So is that partly, do you think, why we're in this mess of where we're doing alternative approval process again for stuff like vehicles? Is that part of what's going on there?
I think so. Unfortunately, you and I don't get to turn around and look at all the budget numbers.
Yeah.
Me being in business, I source the material that I know is good from the closest to manufacture point as humanly possible. We used to have a purchasing commission in Prince George that went bye-bye. The purchasing commission is awesome because that's all they do that's the coupon clippers. Okay. You have a whole room full of these folks and they're looking at street lights and lampposts and traffic lights and signs and pylons and paint and you name it, and they buy it in volume, in stupid volume. And then we have it and we've got it at a reduced rate. And because we're the Northern Hub, and this is something we need to discuss amongst council and amongst the other community councils, is, hey, you know what? Instead of you guys having to buy your traffic signs and stuff, we've got a sign shop in Prince George. You don't have one. Instead of you ordering your signs, order them from us.
Oh, like saying to like Mackenzie or Fort St. James or...
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The whole Radar O'Reilly routine, right? Where supply talks to supply. Hey, you know, I've got 25 lampposts. Yeah, well, I've got 82 light heads. I'll trade you these for those. Sure. And we can turn around and look after the other communities at the same time without having to keep all this inventory sitting on hand, just being idle. It's a thought.
Yeah, no. So that's good. So what I hear you saying is that find the savings and pass them on as like, because you'll get more savings if you're buying more volume, and passing that along to the rest of the North in sort of the fashion that you'd expect from a Northern capital by working together with them.
Sure, exactly. So as far as the alternate approval process, I think it was just a case of they didn't want to have to go to a referendum, because that's exactly how it would go. They'd have to go to a referendum. Easier to go AAP, and hopefully nobody will raise their ruckus. And with the last AAP, with the fire hall and the pool,
those things are notoriously virtually impossible to succeed at, and especially the way they did that one.
Yeah. It's straight as a snake's back. I mean, seriously, the amount of work that you have to do, and then the rules were ever changing. Welcome to the Sahara. You know, where the hills always change.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness. Oh, dear. So, I had a question about arts and sports funding and arts and recreation funding. If an organization, and I know right now I think the deadline is coming up for the My PG grant, and I mean it's not a lot of money, but it is a lot for the organization asking for it. I mean, so that's sort of a small potatoes item. But what about the bigger asks? Like, how do you feel about those? Like, what do you think the city's role should be in those things?
The city should have a department that's all it does is chase grants. That's all it does. It doesn't do anything else. It doesn't count paper clips. It just chases grants and federal funding and provincial funding money. If it did that, then we could turn around and support more sports activities. We could sponsor more cultural activities, a performing arts center. I mean, we can do that. This is what I mean by being on that waffly little edge of getting out of a town and being a city. Sometimes you just gotta keep pushing.
So my understanding is that municipal funding has gone down significantly over the years. So has that been replaced? So they've taken out the general, like removed some of the general funding and then replaced it with grants. Is that sort of what's happened? Because
A little bit, a little bit. Well, it's just that in itself is a minefield of mousetraps, and it's 3 o'clock and the lights are out. So it's tricky, but yeah, they've kind of cut the general funding, and they're looking for grants, and then because there's always federal or provincial money kicking around, it's just if you hear about the grant, you got to get on it.
mm-hmm.
So, like as a sort of relative analogy, the District of Hope. They had everybody trapped there here in the wintertime because the highways were shut down. The city administration was radio silent. So there was no emergency management that was noticeable to the public in town. But there was the provincial grant for emergency management funding that they could have applied for. But the city or the district, or it's the District of Hope, they chose not to apply for it. You know, they dropped the ball in a critical situation where nobody was available to answer phones or whatever to tell people what was going on or coordinate. But yet they also didn't want to turn around and take free money from the province to coordinate emergency management. So funding is out there. You've got to shake the tree. You've got to listen for it, and you got to go after it. Then, because you know what sports organizations you have, what cultural organizations are looking at, dramatics, theater, music, symphony. There's all these, but if you've got a need for it, then you've got to have an organization that's all they do is chase the funding. And that's what the city could do.
Okay.
So,
all right. Okay, so I'll just that's so. Oh, so one thing that I wanted to ask you is what do you bring to the table that you think is missing on the current council? Like, why should somebody vote
what
for
we're having
you?
right now?
Pardon?
What we're having right now, that's what's missing. I would like to encourage. Well, here's a prime example. Last night's council meeting. $760,000 for a 750 square foot washroom at Carrie Jean Gray Park. Now, I'm glad you're sitting
almost
down.
$1 million.
Yes, just shy of $1 million for a 750 square foot washroom at Carrie Jean Gray Park. Now, you're sitting, and that's a good thing. And in 2021, we built washroom facilities at Ron Brandt Park for $240,000. Same basic idea. Cinder block building, washrooms. That's it. But the one at Carrie Jean Gray Park is, well, the one at Ron Brandt is 40% smaller than the one at Carrie Jean Gray Park. And that's because the one at Carrie Jean Gray Park also has a storage portion to it for parks to store equipment. But still, almost $1 million for a set of washrooms. That's something. There's 3 councillors that said flat out, no, that's nuts.
But it's still passed.
Yeah, but it got passed. So you and I are going to be paying for a $760,000. Well, it'll probably go over budget anyway. Washroom at Carrie Jean Gray Park. Why? Because there's a deadline, because the summer games are coming. So it's got to be done for the summer games.
And it's like, well, no, because I was looking at the timeline as well, and I thought, well, wait a minute, you're going to build a washroom in what, 5 months, 4 months?
No, it's cinder block, so it's easy.
But the plumbing and everything, because my point is that when you're doing something on an expedited basis like that, you have to pay top dollar for everything.
Well, lack of planning on their part does not constitute an emergency on the contractor's part, right? I mean, we've all heard that. I mean,
Yes, we have.
it's a Saturday afternoon and there's 3 inches of water in the basement. Uh, you know, but still, administration knew that this was going to be critical. They knew about it in January, and they didn't say anything till the tail end of February that, well, we can't make any revisions now, because if we make revisions now, we have to put it out to tender. We have to get new blueprints. They don't actually. What they do is they grab the blueprints from the Ron Brandt Park and just apply them to Carrie Jane Gray. They ignore the storage locker and they put a sea can behind the bleachers.
So back to my question then. So why isn't there a bit more pushback? Why does this happen? And this is back to the question of what do you think you can bring to City Council?
Well, I think it's council members getting clotheslined. I've been watching council for the last 2 years, ever since I've been involved in the business advocacy group. And time and again, they get clotheslined.
Which means?
Well, it means that it's starting to get down to decision time. Administration holds off providing that information till like the 11th hour. Then they dump it on council, and council's got no choice. It's either wind your watch or go for lunch. You've got no options. You cannot go back and revise anything. You can't look or request a return for information on anything. You're stuck. It's this way or no way. And that's a problem.
I remember that vote do you remember this? That $500,000 addition to the pool, that jungle thing?
Yeah.
Like it was
like that. Oh, you're gonna get this. Yeah.
I know, it was crazy. I thought, you guys can't be serious, but they were, and they approved it.
Yeah.
In one sitting, like they had one meeting. Like it was like, oh, we have this, and it's like, so they showed the flashy video, and up came, oh my goodness, that looks like so much fun, $500,000 worth.
Yep.
And then this outdoor park that, what's the guy who owns Canadian Tire, sell me?
The Jumpstart?
Yes.
Program?
Yeah, I mean, I think Canadian Tire was fronting all the money for it, but there's now a huge issue for the foundation, and they think, oh, they don't have the money to build the foundation for it. And
that was the discussion of, well, okay, the fire hall's sitting on an old landfill.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, we have a city archives. They've got plans. They know where the landfill was. I mean, but then, again, we go back to the parkade and the fact that nobody did any geotech drilling to realize that that's a sinkhole anyway. But anyway, we move along. Okay, so the ground is cruddy. They've made an arrangement, or they're talking about possibly putting it where the tennis courts are, across the street on something that's been there for 35 years, the tennis courts. They're going to rework that. So it's just, there seems to be a severe lack of planning and digging into the history before they make decisions.
And
that's what I've got to change. This is what I want to change in council, is to turn around, grab a few council members and go, does this make any sense to you? I mean, really, would you make that kind of decision with your house? Would you do that? It's like I said with the Carrie Jean Gray Park thing, $760,000 for washrooms. Okay, you've given us zero time to decide about it. If I were on council, I would say, well, first off, no. Second off, here's your option. The plants from Ron Grant Park get dumped in your lap. You turn around and put that out for retender, and that's what we put in. We put in the washrooms, and that's that. Storage, okay, sorry, Parks is going to either have to drive around with the tools in the back of their trucks, or we get a $2,000 sea can, 20-foot one, We put it behind the bleachers. We paint it white. We put an alarm system in it. You put your tools in there. Okay, there you go. Because I mean, you can buy sea cans for $3,000-4,000, not almost $1 million for a roll-up door. It's just that it's that kind of logic. It's that really okay. That the kids have left the room now. Now the adults want to talk. And that's what has to happen, in my opinion.
Yep. No, I think that's good. I think so. What you're sort of have you sort of figured out what your sort of campaign motto is? Have you thought about that, or your jingle?
Well, it's time for change. It's our city. It's the residents' choice. Do we keep going down the course that we're going now, spending money to cover up bad decisions and overspending, or do we turn around and get some folks in council that are going to say, "Whoa, pump the brakes"? We have to decide, and maybe we don't want to decide right now. Maybe we want to decide in a half hour. So there has to be a disconnect between city administration and city council. City council is ultimately the voice of the people of the city of Prince George. If I get into council, then I have to turn around and consider everybody, people who have got multi-million-dollar homes, a senior citizen on a fixed income living in a home that she's been in for the last 65 years of her life, and she can barely hang on to it. I have to listen to her more than I have to listen to the folks in the $1.2 million home, because she's got more to lose. So I have to balance that. I have to try and look at that. And I think all councillors need to go at it that way. You have to think of the people that you're representing. I represent small business people who have got their life blood into their small business. They love opening their doors every day. They love seeing the smiling faces behind the masks that come in, that they know, at least they know by the voice, that's the same person that's come in and seen them every Tuesday for, decades. So that's who I'm trying to represent, and that's what I have to be cognizant that I'm representing.
Well,
I don't
that
know.
has been very lovely. So, I wanted to, and I think I'm going to just take this extra time because I wanted to ask you,
Sure.
just as an interest thing, if you could sit down with any dead world leader to have coffee with, who would it be?
Any dead world leader to have coffee with, who would it be? Dead world leader to have coffee with, who would it be? All right, wow. That's a good one. John A. MacDonald.
John A. MacDonald.
Yeah. When you sit back and think of everything that was going on in his time, from the issues with the Indigenous folks, the First Nations peoples, the threat of the U.S., trying to pull Canada together and unify it and lock it up so that it would stay Canadian. Then the push and the pull from France and from it's just it would be interesting if there was a sober moment to talk to him, because I understand he liked to have his beverage every now and again.
Yes, he certainly seemed to accomplish a lot, despite that.
Yeah, well, it's that kind of load to go from one fire to another and not skip a beat. He would be interesting to talk to. I remember reading some of Pierre Berton's books, The Last Spike, the national dream. That was that. It was just amazing what was being done and how he managed to do it. So,
Well, that's really interesting. Okay, well, thank you, John, so very much, and I wish you all the very best. And yeah, well, thank you for taking that step forward to put your, to step out and do something. In this age of like we've got so much voter apathy, our voter turnout is so low, and so it's good to see really committed candidates stepping forward, and hopefully that brings more interest, because that's something that really bothers me is low voter turnout, because that means people are disengaged and that they've given up on the system. They don't see themselves as part.
yeah, and I'm hoping that this type of dialogue and the accessibility, because the advantage is you taking the effort to put this together and interview me. We're in other people's homes and we don't even know it. So
Yeah.
they can turn around, they can pause us, they can go get a bag of chips, come back, but at least they get to see the real people that hopefully are looking to represent them. So I hope this helps.
Yep. Okay. Well, thank you so very much. And John, how can people get a hold of you?
My website for the candidacy, it's www.zukowski, ZUKOWSKI .city.
.city. Okay.
City. Yeah,
Okay.
Zukowski.city. So they can go to that website. There's some information about me. There's information about the issues that I see with the city. And then there's also an explanation of what I stand for, what the main planks of my platform are. I'm kind of a Swiss Army knife. There isn't anything that I can't tackle. I'm not a professional at everything, but I am a very, very fast learner. All I can do is put myself out there, and we'll see if the people have the faith to let me look after them.
All right, that's very good. And do you also post? You've got a YouTube channel as well, right?
Yeah, they can get to the YouTube channel. There are videos on the website that will take them that are linked to the YouTube channel.
Okay, excellent. All right. Okay. And they will be able to, once this is done, and I think, like I was telling you, that YouTube has to go through it and make sure it's, all good, then you'll post it as well. And so thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you very much for your time, Trudy. I do appreciate it.
And
everybody at home, thank you.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And I'm sure hoping that we can do this with the rest of the candidates. I know that there's one other already declared that I need to reach out to. So thank you, everyone, for listening.